What's up, everyone? BuffaloPrime here, bringing you more HR content. Wow, this YouTube channel has quite the variety of content. So for those of you that don't know, I am an HR business partner and have been for more than a few years now. I have an MBA, 8 years in the HR field. It's not a great amount, but it's enough where I think, like, it might be fun to actually read and respond to some r/AskHR topics. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again today. So if you like what you see, leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff that helps the engagement of the channel. But without further ado, let's go ahead and just dive in and answer some questions. So we're going to start with a long one today because I actually started reading this and I was like, oh, this is actually a pretty good one. This is in Texas. It's from OK Werewolf 4082, asking, temporary associates keep lying, throwing me under the bus. Can they be written up for just lying? Now, at face value, you're like, what does that even mean? But this person actually works in HR at a warehouse, which, when I think of that, I think most times HR at warehouses specifically are mostly clerks. So they handle people clocking in and out. If they have issues with their pay, getting them badges, doing like onboarding, it's basic level HR. But there's some interesting stuff here too, I think. So let's go ahead and read all those through. Basically, I work at HR in a warehouse in my area, and lately I've been having a huge problem with temp associates either lying to me or supervisors throwing us under the bus. We're pretty laid back, and the associates at most will usually get spoken to about the accident, but they keep doing this so they will not get in trouble. I have several examples. One associate said he called in, and when I spoke to the supervisor, he said that it was a no-call, no-show. Obviously, someone is lying. So let me break it down right there. If you don't have a consistent way for people to call in that you can track, the failure is not on the employee, the failure is on you. So if this is a situation where an associate said they can call in and you can't verify that without talking to a supervisor, it's not a good system. Most warehouses will run a call-in system through an automated call, like phone system, which is not that expensive to set up, or through the HR person and the front desk person themselves. So you should probably consider getting into that instead of relying on your supervisors to track that for you when they probably have something else they should be doing instead. Another associate said that they did not have a badge for our daily meeting of 30 plus people. I'd asked several times over the past 2 weeks if there was anyone that needed a badge, and this individual never raised their hand. My boss went out there and did the same thing, and again, no one raised their hand. Finally, yesterday, this guy says no one never gave me one. I was mad, for lack of a better term. And after that meeting, I pulled him aside and asked him why he did not tell me he did not have a badge. His response, well, I thought I did. Well, he thought wrong. We have an audit coming up and we need to be 100% in compliance. I told the associate by saying what he said, he has now made it look like I did not do my job, and that is unacceptable. It's kind of unacceptable in that scenario that you're HR and you said something like that to an employee. How fucking dare you, dude? I'm going to take the side of the employee in this scenario, right? You should also have a system, especially if there's compliance associated with it, to automatically give everyone a badge. And if they lose their badge, you charge them for it. You even have an agreement saying like, hey, here's your first badge. It's free. If you lose this badge, we will take it out of payroll the next time you lose it. Another thing is, like, how do you have a system where somebody can get away with not having a badge? Like, if you need to wear it, you should be auditing people in some way so that it doesn't take you however long this took for you to know that somebody doesn't have a badge. That should be painfully obvious. In fact, again, rather cheap way to do timekeeping is to have a badge system. I don't know. This is a weird one. This bottom part, by the way, I told the associate by saying what he said, he has now made me look bad. Don't say that to an employee. Another associate lied and sent me a text saying that he never got any contact information. Why are employees texting you? It was an HR rep. And that is why he was not there that night. Another associate lied and sent a text message to me saying he never got any contact information. That's why he wasn't there that last night. The funny part is that if you didn't get contact info, how did you get my number? My number is on the form I give them during the orientation. Yeah, okay, that's weird. It's a temp associate, though. This seems more like a rant than it is actual HR advice. While not having a badge or calling off is a small offense, I feel like lying is a bigger one. I would not like to write these people up if it happens again, but I've never heard of anyone getting written up for that. Really? Okay. My question is, can you write up someone for lying about not having a badge and for saying they called off when they didn't? Yes. I want to address this with the temporary associates on Monday, and I want to make sure they are done correctly and they understand the consequences if this behavior keeps occurring. So there's actually a lot of interesting stuff here. First of all, I think this person's clearly an entry-level HR individual, which is completely fine that you're asking these questions. Just as a reminder, as HR, you need to be professional. Telling somebody that it's unacceptable, that they are insinuating you haven't done your job is pretty bad. That's really unprofessional, and you shouldn't say that. There's better ways to go about that. Two, you can write up anybody for basically any violation of a policy, right? So if they don't have a badge, and they are required to have a badge, and you have a policy that's written that says you have to have a badge, and they don't have a badge, you can write them up for that. If they're lying about calling in and actually didn't show up, and you can verify that, you can write them up for that. They're also temporary associates. Temporary associates do not have the same basically stake in employment that permanent employees do. You could just simply terminate their temp contract. So a lot of these questions are really odd because you're asking about addressing a temporary associate, which at-will employment does not usually apply to. So yeah, I mean, I guess write them up, but you should also you have a bigger issues on your hand with basically giving employees avenues to do this. Very clerical things that should have already been established as a company. So this is just a weird scenario overall. This next question is from Long Jumping Dog 7768 in Arkansas. My coworker is cyber harassing me. In short summary, my coworker has hacked into my camera and microphone in my phone and monitors my calls, texts, and locations. Subsequently, she tells other coworkers the things I say about them, or about things I say to my mom or to myself while alone in my apartment. The other coworkers are put off by my remarks and treat me with disdain. Obviously, this makes the working environment uncomfortable for me. My problem is that I do not know what I can do to alleviate the situation and reclaim my right to privacy. How I know she hacked onto my phone. This is very odd. You should already go to HR. I don't understand why. This is a very long scenario that you should just go to your HR department about. All right, my grandma passed away suddenly, and I had told no one at work about it. Not even the managers knew. The only person I discussed my grandmother's passing with was my mother over the phone at my own apartment while being completely alone. The very next day, I overheard talking to one of her friends while they were working. She said, "I'm so glad my husband works in the tech industry so we can watch that bitch cry about her dead grandma." Go to HR. What the fuck? Go to HR. What are you doing? The next thing I overheard came from a manager. The manager said she was taking screenshots of me using my front-facing camera, and that she was taking these screenshots of me in another program to draw devil's horns on me. This doesn't seem real. This legit doesn't seem real. They said that they were sending each other screenshots of me in a large group text that everyone at work is on. Then I overheard her saying that her husband got into my phone using a hacking technique called phishing. For those of you that don't know, phishing is where you basically send somebody a fake website to log into, like a fake bank account or a fake bank website or something. So basically a website that really appears real but isn't, and you like log in using your Facebook credentials or your banking credentials or whatever, and then they basically steal your username and password and enable you to log on to, you know, different things that you own. That would not be a technique to get into somebody's phone and like hack their camera. But it would be a technique to get into somebody's like Verizon account, I guess. I'm worried I can't tell my managers because they're in on it and will deny it. I'm also worried of the repercussions of contacting HR because I fear they won't believe me and they will want to fire me. I also don't know how to prove her husband hacked my phone and will just end up looking crazy. How do I get out of this situation? Oh, holy shit. All right, first of all, let's dispel this right now. HR is okay, I can't speak for every HR person out there, but if you're an HR pro that's watching me, hopefully you agree with me. We in HR, I'll even say this is a part of the dark side of HR. Again, that book I want to write. We don't have enough of a connection to you as an employee to frankly care about about backlashing against you at all. Right? So if you go to HR and you are afraid that if you come to us, let's play a scenario out. Hey, Mr. HR man, I think my manager is harassing me and I want to report it. Hi, yes, I'm HR man. Thank you for reporting this harassment call or charge. I now think less of you and want to fire you. That doesn't happen. We don't really, we hear the situation and we want to remedy it, but we don't have enough of a connection to you to be like, wow, I suddenly have a different opinion about you. Our opinion is vastly unchanged when people come to us with concerns, okay? And a lot of people think that going to HR is bothersome, like you're bothering us, that you'll get retaliated against, that HR will suddenly have a target on you. We don't have that kind of connection to you to target you. You are, frankly, in a lot of sense, in large-scale HR, you are an employee. Your connection with your manager is way more important than it is to us. Because frankly, if you don't have a concern, we don't really interact with you a whole lot. And frankly, we don't really think about you a whole lot. We think about the larger set of HR and larger set of a company, not individuals. And that's, again, a part of the dark side of HR. It actually allows us to handle individual situations with unbiased And frankly, it allows us to dump off the terrible things that we have to deal with on an occasion, right? These harassments, these bullyings, these terminations, right? We have to disassociate at some level. So when you asking this question, I'm afraid to go to HR because I'm afraid that we're going to want to fire you. We just frankly don't have the connection or the resonance with you to think that. Like we have to disassociate in some level. So you coming to us with a weird question is not going to make us think about you in any different way than we already do. All right. Let me just dispel that right now. In this situation, you need to go to HR because there's two major things that HR can immediately start investigating. A, if you have a manager that is taking screenshots and using a front-facing camera and they are using a program to draw devil's horns on me, I assume that's on company computers. HR can not subpoena, that's a legal term, right? But they can basically go to IT and be like, let me see it, right? And IT can determine if those screenshots are actually being done. Also, if there's a group work text and any of the phones that are used are work phones, we can also get a hold of those as well. So you'd be easily able to verify some of this stuff. And if it's happening, it's large scale harassment and a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. So I would go to HR immediately. Some of the things about getting hacked, that's weird, right? That's some weird stuff. Overhearing somebody talk about you're crying about your dead grandma. I mean, was your grandma in an obituary and you have a weird coworker? Like, you know, is somebody else related to that same grandma that might have said something? Like, there's a lot of reasons that might happen, but that was a doozy of one for sure. Our next question comes from Jaeger Hunts in California. How bad is it to renegotiate after signing the offer letter? Yikes, let's read this. Let me first start by saying that I'm an idiot. Okay. I recently accepted a job offer and signed off on the offer letter, but I then reread my offer and letter and realized that there is a disconnect between the verbal offer and the offer letter regarding the equity grant. The recruiter told me that I would receive $15,000 of company stock, but the letter said the stock options are available to purchase, which is not the same. Very true, it's not the same. I specifically asked if the equity grant is an option, and she told me no, since the company is a pre-IPO, it is the company shares. This should have been a red flag to the person that has no idea what she's talking about. A lot of recruiters don't in those scenarios. I mean, you go into equity and stock. I mean, those are pretty high level compensation things. So I'm guessing this position has some level of, individual impact on the organization in some way. You know, this could be a senior level individual contributor or a leadership role. After the initial excitement wore off, I realized she had made many mistakes, including telling me the wrong bonus percentage, but I had caught it before signing the letter. But I had caught it before signing. So wait, what? What should I do? Should I go back? I probably hadn't caught it, is what this person meant to say. So what should I do? Should I go back and renegotiate? Just submit my resignation letter and turn down the two other offers? I just feel super embarrassed because at this level of my career, I shouldn't be making such a novice mistake. Okay, so very true. You should not have made that mistake. You should read everything in an offer before you sign it. I feel like that should be obvious, but mistakes happen. We're human. So first of all, there's a couple of options to go here. First of all, I would tell your recruiter, listen, I made a mistake. There were some issues with my offer letter. Can I please have a voided copy of my old offer that I signed and the new offer have these corrections be made? Most companies are going to be like, yeah, sure, of course. We're sorry we made the error. Here you go. In the worst case scenario where the recruiter says, well, no, the conditions of this offer have changed since we verbally spoke. Here are the new conditions of the offer and you have already signed it. I frankly, and this is going to be weird, I would go to an employment attorney, not to sue. Most people think you go to an attorney, that means you're going to sue them right then and there. Definitely not. An employment attorney is going to help you respond to that because there is such a thing as a verbal contract when it comes to a lot of these business to business or business to person interactions, right? There is merit on the verbal agreement that was made between you and the recruiter. Now, depending on the state, that might adjust a little bit. I don't know California, but the fact that you verbally accepted something that's different than it was in writing, again, you signed a document that you shouldn't have signed, and that might skew everything. An employment attorney might be able to weigh in on that a little bit more. I would say that if I was the HR person of this company, I would be very nervous to not go back and fix the offer letter for you. That would seem risky to me. All right, next question is from Skytrex, I guess. In California, can I get fired for not showing up to work after I let my manager know that I requested this off 3 days in advance? So I'm in high school right now, and I work at a fast food restaurant. I texted my manager 3 days ahead, letting her know that I won't be able to show up on the day I asked. Can I get fired for not going that one day? I haven't in my previous times missed a day where I was supposed to go, so I'm safe to go. I live in California. This person's answer is correct. Yeah, you can be fired for any reason or no reason at all. And frankly, a lot of companies will do this thing where if you request time off and they deny it and you take it off anyway, it can be a double occurrence on an attendance policy or be considered a no-call, no-show. So I would be very in tune with your leader whenever you're requesting time off and they don't respond, or you're requesting time off and they say no, especially if it's a scenario where you know you can't make it to that shift. Try to communicate to your manager as best as possible. If it's a company that doesn't provide a lot of flexibility, I would probably consider finding a different job. A lot of companies don't have flexibility, and they're usually not great companies to work for. This next question comes from Lolly Navy, and it's about a PIP, the Performance Improvement Plan. I dabble in these very constantly. From Texas, PIP, pushing me out or generally want me to improve? I love the way that you worded this question because there's very different answers between the front-facing side of HR and the quote-unquote dark side of HR. But let's go. Kickoff context, I'm at my 90-day mark as a new hire at a company with 120 employees, give or take, remote work. They care about their employees for sure. 90 days and you're already on a PIP. Okay, that makes me uncomfortable as HR, I'll be honest with you. So I look at my calendar and there's a meeting with my manager and a person from HR. I'm like a mid-level person. I was placed on a 30-day PIP. We don't call them that, and was told to improve in a few areas. Generally areas like presenting, asking more questions, a couple of delayed projects, better understanding of what we sell. 30-day outcomes of PIPs are just fixing the above problems. Okay. I had a one-on-one with my manager later that day with no HR, and I asked him if he wanted me to quit or if he believed I could do my job. I was serious and wanted to know on a personal level. I wouldn't hold it against him. He said yes, he believed that I could do the job, but he was concerned. He told me that the PIP, we don't call it a PIP, was real. I told him that I was committed to doing my best over the next 30 days. So my initial thoughts here, pipping somebody at the 90-day mark is pretty much setting them up to not succeed, in my opinion. So I think if you're that new in your employment, you should be given probably a bigger window to try to learn your job. Now, if you're performing well below what most people would perform at that level within the 90-day process, there needs to be a conversation that's like, hey, you're kind of falling behind in these areas. What do you think that we need to do to help you improve? And a decision can usually be made at that point to say like, okay, well, we're going to give you another extended 30 days or whatever of training and then place them on a PIP afterwards, or basically say, hey, this might not be the right job for you, leading to an employee's resignation. But anyway, let's continue looking. Since then, casual chit-chat is still great. We talk about the news or whatever for a few minutes in our one-on-one, but sometimes his body language doesn't give me the best vibes. He interacts with me a little different in group meetings with the team, but not noticeably different to anyone other than me. That basically makes me think that the manager has regretted hiring you, the way that you've worded that. So is this legit or am I wasting my time? To me, goals are 100% achievable, i.e. communicate better, etc., but they're not as specific as hard numbers. PIPs should always have goals that are measurable. So if an employer puts on a PIP something like communicate better and it's not measurable, that's garbage PIP, frankly. I'll still do my best regardless because I have integrity, but I want to know if this is real or if he's trying to push me out. That's a good question. For context, I didn't get defensive when I was placed on it, and I won't try to defend myself here. There's nothing wrong with asking questions and defending yourself, by the way. Don't think that that makes you a bad employee if your employer comes to you with like a PIP or some kind of coaching forum and for you to challenge it. It doesn't make you a bad employee. I took full responsibility because I can only control what I do. Not like I could plead my case anyways for legitimate concerns I have with the examples provided. You could have and should have with HR there. Other than that, I was told I needed to improve in a few areas mentioned above in the past, but I thought they were just coaching tips because I was onboarding. Company onboarding is great. Team onboarding was vague and brief. You should give that feedback. General objective opinion. I'm going to be objective and say I definitely could improve in some areas. You are 90 days into a job and you're mid-level. Like, we'll talk about it. But most people say it takes 3 to 6 months to understand what we sell, so there's some leeway there. This whole post is just rambling thoughts because I'm exhausted and the box is too small. Thanks for understanding. Appreciate the feedback in advance. So here's the deal. Two things. A, if they wanted to fire you, they would. But that's risky if it's this early in your employment history, right? But if they ultimately, like the manager was like, this isn't going to work, most of the time, And this is where the dark side of HR is. If a manager comes to me, let's say that your manager has come to me as the HR rep and said, hey, you know what? Lolly Navy is 90 days into their job and they're not doing well. I don't think it's going to work out. I'm going to tell them, have we ever done any kind of communication with that employee to let them know they're not doing well and to give them an opportunity to improve? Hence why the PIP might have come up, right? Because it's basically HR's check on the leader to say, you can't just give up on people, right? So here's the problem that I have. It says in this post that it takes 3 to 6 months to understand what we sell. Most mid-level jobs, it takes you a year to even learn and to be proficient. And if a company doesn't understand that, they're shit. And the HR is shit for basically not empowering leaders to be more patient. But that could be a difficult ask depending on the type of work that you do. So what I would say here is you need to have a very serious conversation with your leader, which sounds like you've already done it, and they've said that, yes, they want to keep you, but there's concerns, right? And instead of doing this weird chit chat thing and talking about the news or whatever in your one-on-ones, you need to, as an employee, be proactive. Now, I'm not saying that in this scenario, the power is always on the employee to do better, but if your leader is not doing what they can to keep you, you need to fight for your own employment. And that is challenging. When HR and your leader come to you and they're like, hey, you know, these areas are bad, you could be like, yeah, I understand that, but the training hasn't been very good either. And I'm going to make a commitment to get better at X, Y, and Z, but in the future, this training needs to be better or future people will run into the same problem I am. Like, that's not a problem to voice your concerns. And in the one-on-ones, you need to, I would say, every single time you meet with your leader, be like, all right, how was this last week in terms of my performance and what can I improve on? Don't even talk, don't even chit chat. Don't even look at your leader as a friend anymore. You are fighting for your own employment. If you really want to work at this company, you need to document when things aren't going well and why they aren't going well. And if your manager tries to push you out the door, make sure you talk to HR about like, well, yeah, I'm doing my best, but these are the barriers that I have and my manager is doing nothing. Food for thought. All right, we'll do a last one here. This is from Throwaway 384-627W8 from California. These have been really long today, so we'll just do one more and we'll call it for the day. It's from California. Voluntary termination paperwork after harassment. That title got me interested to read. Long story short, had a thing with a coworker. I mean, have we all been there? They became my boss, their own choice, not mine. Once they became my boss, I backed off. That's pretty smart, I guess. They kept pursuing, mailing gifts to my house, saying inappropriate things at work, etc. I wasn't offended by that, but I did not reciprocate it. And when I didn't react how they wanted to, they took it out on me at work. Wow. This is like classic Title VII stuff. Threatened to fire me for disrespecting them, posted my job, made me personally respond to the job candidates even though there was no intention to hire them, started secretly transcribing our meetings, etc. Holy shit. I've been at the job longer than them, but they were in a higher position with more connections and it became unbearable. I had medical issues from the stress and have been in therapy for 6 months. I did get a better job, so I left. I'm still confused about everything. HR requested I sign a paper that this was a voluntary termination. My boss has told everyone I left for better pay, which isn't true. I declined a raise for my boss in the past and they gave it to me anyway. What happens if I don't sign the form? So this is an awesome question, actually. I love this one. I have a bunch of thoughts. A, did you ever report this to HR? That is vitally important. If you reported it to HR, designate the date and time when you did, right? If you reported this issue to HR and they did nothing and you resigned, you can still sue them. It's amazing how the court system works. Basically, the way that Title VII and anti-harassment law works is that if a company becomes aware that harassment is occurring, in which case a boss has basically said, you need to be like, your advances are required for me to be nice to you in my job, and if you deny my advances, I'm going to take it out on you. That's kind of really basic harassment at a very, very core level, and it's literally what's written in law. And you make a complaint to HR, and they do nothing about it, and they can't even prove that they did anything about it. You could sue them even if you signed a waiver, right? You could still be like, well, go fuck yourself, right? Now, I would read that paper that says, is this a voluntary termination, very carefully. If the paper literally says, I am voluntarily vacating my position, I fucking wouldn't sign it either, actually. There's like no reason. You've already left the job. You don't have to sign shit. In fact, I would tell you, well, okay, get an attorney if you really want to know, right? My advice is not legal advice. But I wouldn't sign shit. If you're already gone, fuck them. Like, you don't have to sign anything. Now, I will say that if you are presented with a paper like this and you would like to sign it, Note that if you designate that this is a voluntary termination, that doesn't necessarily dissuade you from, again, lawsuits or unemployment claims or things like that. You can sign a thing that says I voluntarily resigned, but you can basically present like there were these issues that shouldn't have been issues that I let my company know about and they did nothing about it. That usually qualifies you for some of those benefits as well. Now, if there's a severance agreement, that changes literally everything. Severance agreements are usually in place because the company will pay you money to basically not take them to court and to not disparage them outside of the interactions that you've had with them, right? So if you're given a severance package, usually as a result of termination, basically, yeah, you can't really turn around and sue them for anything. However, you can also refuse to sign the severance package and take them to court anyway. So depending on the severity of what happened, which you've made it pretty clear that your former thing turned into your boss, and because you stopped making it a thing, they treated you differently, which is textbook harassment. I would basically go to an employment attorney, but I really hope you said something to HR before you quit, because you could be entitled to a lot there. All right, that's enough for my HR advice for today. Again, if you liked what you saw, comment, do all that fun stuff below. Let me know if you want me to keep doing this series. I had a couple of good comments on my last video, and I appreciated that a lot. I really enjoy doing them, but hopefully you guys enjoy watching them as well. For now, I'm BuffaloPrime, and I'm out!